of Economics at INSEAD, and in Washington tonight, Daniel Hamilton is at the Center for Transatlantic Relations. And let's go back to you, Daniel. You were just making a point on how these entrenched ideological positions are really harming the American economy. You know, this isn't about the European situation where there is no growth and there is no real light at the end of the tunnel, it seems, for the European debt crisis at the moment. In America, this is purely political, it seems.
Well, obviously, there's an ideological debate about the role of the government in the market. How do we maintain U.S. competitiveness, get back on track economically? And there are different approaches. And, you know, in a good faith debate, you can look at those. But I think the good faith is gone. And that's the trouble, that we're suffering this high economic price now because of this political stalemate. And besides the economic growth debate, we have this huge problem of debt and deficits in ways similar to what the Europeans have, and we have to solve that issue. $12 trillion gap this decade between revenues and expenditures. Somehow we have to take care of that. There's great debate right now about defense cuts and scaring, you know, the whole defense industry and that whole complex in the United States. But you know, they're talking mainly, you know, at most about $1 trillion in cuts. That would be a huge cut to the defense industry. But it's only $1 trillion. We're talking about $12 trillion. So even saving defense money isn't really going to do this. The Bush tax cuts, which were extended by President Obama, and account for about, if they would stop, which the president has said that's going to happen a year from now, that would be about another $3 trillion in revenue. So now you're up to about $4 trillion. We still got to do $8 more trillion. So none of this really gets to this, you know, the hard issues. And really the only possibility that gets you about $1 trillion a year is to broaden the tax base. That means not just raising taxes, but getting rid of preferences, all sorts of loopholes. The U.S. tax system is just a bonanza, a smorgasbord of tax exceptions and you know, preferences and things. And simply taking care of that would save you $1 trillion a year, gain you that in revenue. So that's $10 trillion over the decade. That is about, you know, what could come close to this real issue. But there's no willingness to do this on either side, and I'm afraid that this sort of stalemate is going to prolong the agony in the United States, just as Europe's stalemate is doing that, and the rest of the world is roaring ahead. And I think there's a real question about the role of the West as we think about the economy that we're facing in the 21st century.
It's interesting, isn't it? It seems like democracy has become harmful to economic growth.
Actually, I think the problem is that we're a bit driven by short-term issues. We're driven by financial markets. And, you know, in the 1960s, if you opened an economics textbook, you would find that, you know, if you put money in the economy, you increase public spending, you get what it was called a Keynesian multiplier. And now you have something which is the polar opposite, which is, you know, we need to cut public spending and we need to have primary surplus. That is, we need to...
These are the much vaunted austerity measures that we're all living under here in Europe.
That's right. In fact, I mean, the reality is gray. It's not black nor white. I mean, there was a report by the Council of Economic Advisors a few years back that was actually estimating how much you get in additional revenue when you spend $1. And there are some key priority areas that in the long term will actually foster growth. And I'm thinking about spending like education. In the US, there's this big problem of fixing the school system, which is fixing the school system on both ends. That is, both for those who have no education. You have a big stock of people who have no skills and who are particularly vulnerable in a downturn. That's also the case in Europe. In France, 100,000 people go out of the school system without any skill, without any education. So we've got this problem at the lower end. And in Europe, you also have a problem in higher education at university. Problem of university funding, which is key to innovation. So there's some areas where you can actually spend money and get something, get some more revenue from your public spending. So I think the problem with financial markets is that they are thinking short term. And we've seen that...
but can anyone blame them when you see the volatility of what has been happening in Europe, for example? Investors have been losing a lot of money, haven't they? They have to look after their investments.
Because of a lack of confidence, too, in government and leadership. You can bring it back to that as well, because who's going to invest if they know that the leadership is under stress or cannot be trusted or is not going to give the signals, again, market-based, and you're so right, leading and giving indicators to the market, like will people come and invest in the United States with 9% unemployment and with the debt rising? What do we have to offer? What does this do to our image? Again, and are we still the leader, again, in national security? Can we be out there and putting the fires out, so to speak, or do we still want to do that? The costs, of course, are horrendous. And again, with these cuts, should they come in at that time again? Because there's, again, that peace dividend again.
Well, Ellen's on point, hasn't she? Because you've got the ratings agencies saying that the political issue is the problem. You've got the public saying that they're tired of this political wrangling. You know, isn't it up to the president, Barack Obama, to show some leadership here?
Well, you know, the president is, trying to show leadership. There's a jobs plan. There's a lot of plans out there that are being totally disowned, not even looked at by the Republican Party. And that's the problem. We have to, for America to come back, we have to innovate our way out of this. You know, we can't depend on the corporations. As you pointed out, the corporations are concerned about their short-term losses and gains. They're not responsible for the governing of the people. They're not responsible for the country growing. They're responsible only for their corporate growth. And so what we need is
corporate growth creates jobs, doesn't it?
Corporate growth creates jobs for those people in the corporation. Not necessarily. No. Not always. No. Let me get this clear. We had a lot of problems with corporations. We saved a lot of corporations. That was the whole Wall Street protest right now is not about Wall Street
protest.
Yeah, it's not.
They're protesting about Wall Street. They're protesting about leadership in the White House.
No, they're protesting about corporations being people and not having the same responsibilities as people, and not being treated fairly, not being treated as people when it comes to taxes, because the ordinary people are paying a lot more taxes than a lot of the corporations are, and that's a problem. And what we need is we need innovation.
Not a solution either.
Fair taxes for everyone is a solution. It's a solution that once again, we're coming back to Reagan. It's a solution of fair taxes, not getting rid of all these loopholes. Now, I disagree with our gentleman in Washington. There are people who want to get rid of loopholes, but we cannot get rid of them by ourselves. We have to have both parties working toward the same end. And when you have every Republican presidential candidate except one, Mr. Huntsman, has signed the no tax increase pledge. That's a stone, that's a wall that you can't get around if there's going to be total not consideration of any tax increases.
Daniel Hamilton, do you think that it's unfair, this criticism of Barack Obama? Do you think that he has shown enough leadership, or do you think he could be doing a better job?
Well, I would argue that he had tried very hard to work with the Congress. When you have the leader in the Senate, the Republicans, saying his job is to make Barack Obama a one-term president and everything else is no priority to him, that shows you sort of the approach that's being taken. I believe the Republican political strategy is, in fact, to do that, which means do not try to get a success here. And they are fighting a civil war within their own party, where one part of their party, the Tea Party, wants the United States to drive off the cliff because, in their mind, that's success. That'll show the nature of the problem, which is more the deficits. And so the Republicans are fighting, among themselves. And the only thing they can agree on, it seems, is that they want to make Barack Obama one-term president. That's not much of a forward-looking strategy for the country. And the Democrats, as I said, because of the difficult nature of the cuts and so on, are not providing the support to the president, seems to me, to try to make this move forward. So the president is trying to now a new strategy, which are these executive orders, moving ahead with things where he doesn't really need the Congress, and seeing what we can do. But I don't see a lot of support for that, and this is going to be our problem. So it's I'm sorry, it's a pessimistic scenario, and I think that, as I said, I think the anger in the United States among the public is very reflective of this viewpoint. Michael Bloomberg's point, I agree fully with. I think he's right on the money.
Well, you mentioned the public are angry, and I presume you're referring to the Occupy Wall Street movement and elsewhere. But didn't the Tea Party also spring up out of a grassroots movement? People were fed up with the political system, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a broad-based thing. I don't know. I don't think it's a coherent ideological force, but I think it certainly has a sort of a core. But I think
movement.
The anger here is broad-based. It's not just the Occupy. That gets the media attention. But if you look at public opinion polls, looking at the effectiveness of the U.S. Congress, I mean, it's really quite dismal. It's a broad-based political anger.
Do you think Obama will be a one-term president?
It's hard to say. I believe in the end, the best thing happening to Barack Obama are all the Republican candidates, because, as you say, none of them are really emerging. Even the front runner, Governor Romney, is not exciting many Republicans, much less the Democrats. And so fighting their own civil war means he's going to have a really tough time getting his own party behind him.
Ellen WASYLINA, there is a lot of fighting going on. There's fighting going on between Democrats and Republicans, but there is a lot of fighting going on within your party as well, isn't there? And this is key, isn't it, going
Certainly,
forward?
but I just would like to go back to what the gentleman was saying, is that there is a huge disapproval of Barack Obama's policies. 44%. He's got a 44% approval rating. And the nation says that he's on the wrong track, 73%. So there is a disarray or a big disapproval in how he's leading the country forward. Yes, indeed, there is infighting, but I think they're all up on stage. I think it's really easy to see the infighting, right? They go on and do debates. Like, I've never done debates, and I've watched several of them. It's very interesting to see. Yes, there are extremes, but I believe there are extremes in every party. It's just more evident and on stage these days. Certainly, some of them, when you have a political party, you have to be able to bring people in that are of different orientation. You're all a big family. Like, you have a cousin over here that maybe you don't get along with, that's a little bit different from somebody else, maybe a little bit more radical.
Right, but that could also be said of what's going on in Congress right now. In a democracy,
Certainly.
you have to be able to negotiate. And it seems that the Republicans are absolutely refusing to negotiate on this issue of tax.
But there has to be some semblance of democracy, and again, if we leave these people out to say their mind, and certainly, I'm not for some of these things what they're saying, but you have to.
Do you think the Republicans should be prepared to give more way when it comes to tax?
The country is in a recession. The economic logic would have it that you would not tax people now when you're trying to get the economy going with 9% unemployment. The logic would. Yes, certainly there's reforms to be done. Yes, certainly healthcare is to be reformed. Yes, certainly Obamacare should not go through and oblige people to take in healthcare. Yes, certainly. But let's move the country forward first and think how we can reform the system. Yes, there certainly are things to be done. There's certainly reforms to be done at all levels. But let's get together like we are here and talk about it, and let's go forward.
When the people you're talking about taxing have made record profits in the last few years and aren't paying very much taxes, then I think it is very logical to tax those people. And that's what we can't get through. That's what we just can't get through. But yeah, so I mean, even though I reported all the information about how Reagan did it, we'll just leave that alone. But the thing is also, you're talking about the whole idea of the crazy.
During the Reagan era, it was a very different world economy, was it not? We were looking at a different situation to the one we're looking at now, and the deficit wasn't as big, was it?
No, but the deficit, wasn't as big when after Clinton came out either. But it things happened. But we were in a recession, and the idea was you couldn't raise taxes on people because you're in a recession, and that was totally the opposite of what happened, and it's totally opposite of what worked. So it worked then. It would work again now. But we're talking about again the one or two people in the party that are extreme. I think the problem right now is everyone that's running is kind of a bit of a crazy uncle, And so you have all these ideas that are extreme. It's going to be too extreme for the American people, I think. Granted,
certainly you have to come back to the center to appeal to your base.
And I think the problem, we talked about how Obama has high disapproval ratings, but there are disapproval ratings for different reasons.
That was just today. I just pulled the figures off today.
The base feel he's been too. A lot of the base feel that he's been too agreeable to the Republican side, you know, and it's not. So there are different reasons
They wanted
why
to be
they're.
a bit more, put a bit of stick about,
Yeah,
as it were.
they didn't like that he's trying to, work with the Republicans. They'd like him to do everything by himself, you know. So there may be a high rate of disapproval, but it's for very different reasons, from very different camps.
I mean, myself, we're running out of time, but do you see any hope when you see this dispute? It doesn't seem to progress, does it?
I would try to put the debate at the center. I think there are two things I want to say. I mean, since the Reagan years, unemployment in the U.S. has been lower, and was following, broadly speaking, the European unemployment. And since the crisis, U.S. unemployment levels have reached French unemployment levels. So for the first time in 20 years. And corporate profitability is back to its pre-crisis levels. But companies are not hiring. So they're basically sitting on piles of cash and they're not hiring. Second thing I want to say is about healthcare. I think the healthcare problem in the U.S. is mostly a problem of inefficiency.
It's one of the biggest liabilities, isn't it?
It's one of the biggest liabilities looking forward. So healthcare costs in the U.S. as much as in Europe. And I think our viewers can say that the French healthcare system is
ranked first, by the way, and the American healthcare system is ranked 17th.
All right.
And lots of uninsured.
It looks like the divide between the Democrats and the Republicans isn't going to be solved here on the France 24 debate. But thank you very much indeed to all my guests tonight, and thanks to you for watching. That's it for the debate. I'll be back at the same time tomorrow.